Hi, I'm Katherine Sanders from Sanders Consulting, and I'm working on my series of short interviews about the Surgeon General's framework for workplace well-being and mental health. And here today I'm with Karen Konrath from Transitions Coaching. Karen, can you tell me a little bit about your own background and then your interest and your expertise in wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for asking me to be part of this conversation. It's definitely something that is near and dear to my heart. And as I tell you a little bit about my background, it might make sense more why that is. But so I've always been fascinated by humans from the time I can remember, always just really wanting to understand what makes them tick, what makes us do the things that we do, all of the emotions that come along with being a human. And so I went to college and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but was very much encouraged to get a psychology degree, which made a lot of sense to me at the time because the individual that encouraged me was my stepfather. And he said, here's the thing, if you can understand people, you can do anything because that's where it's at, right? In relationships and with other humans. So I did that, but didn't want to do counseling at the time or social work or anything like that. That just felt too heavy to me. So I decided to do human resources and thought that that would just be the perfect fit for me. So ended up with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor essentially in industrial organizational psychology with this little human resources aspect to it because that wasn't really a thing back then. But that's how I ended up. And then went into the corporate world working in HR for 20 some years. And it was a disaster. It was not the fit that I was hoping that it could be, because what I experienced was there was not much human about it. It was very non-human. It was very robotic. It was
So it's
mechanical and
about the rules and the
oh
policies
yeah,
and the enforcement.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I understand the compliance aspect of it, but most places where I worked, it was all about the policy and looking for what people were doing wrong and punishing for what we were doing wrong versus looking for what we were doing right and withholding things. And it was interesting because as I was thinking about this conversation, I don't remember exactly where it was, but I remember working one place and me saying to my leader, like, gosh, people are really suffering. And that individual said, we are not a rehab facility. We are not a place where we take care of people. This is work. You come to work and that's it.
And work is
And
suffering.
and work is suffering.
Oh my
And
God.
I just really, so I changed jobs a lot because I kept thinking maybe I could find that place. And I never did. So 10 years ago, well, almost 11 now, I decided that I just couldn't do it anymore. And I left the corporate world, but knew that I still wanted to work with humans. And in particular, I really wanted to work with leaders because I just saw such a lack of leadership and people just not being effective as leaders, not understanding how to really interact with the humans that they were supposed to be taking care of and helping to thrive. So I started transitions coaching almost 11, well, it is 11 years ago, actually, next month. And I work with leaders every single day in exactly the things that this framework is talking about. So I was super excited for this conversation, like I said, because it's something that's absolutely near and dear to my heart.
Well, and you and I have collaborated in the past, and so I'm a little bit familiar with your work with executive coaching and coaching of small groups. And I know you're somewhat familiar with what I do, and so it feels like when I saw this framework come up, you were one of the first people I thought of because um, I think there are a number of different entry points for organizations to put this framework to use. And we'll get there. I'm interested in your views on that. But first, I want to just ask you, I'm going to share my screen with the model on it and just ask you, when you look at this, based on your expertise and your experience as an executive coach, what stands out for you?
It's interesting because, gosh, I mean, I love it all. I absolutely love it all. And what you don't see here that actually really does stand out to me is the next layer down, where they really talk about the human needs. And that was what I was like, yes, because we're actually talking about the human being and all of these things that are so necessary for somebody to thrive, not just survive, and not just make it through the day, make it through the week, whatever it is, which is how most people walk around in their jobs. And I have this crazy idea that, a workplace can be a place that's life giving.
Mhm.
We spend so much time there. So, how do we make it something that is really life giving? And it's by focusing on the human. And so, this whole thing, the idea that their voice is in the center, and this idea of equity, but work life harmony, all of it just speaks to me. I mean, there's not one thing on here that I would say, oh, that in particular, because I really do appreciate that it is a full system and that there are different entry points into the system. But if you've got something happening in this system with the individual in the middle of it all, that's what's going to make a difference.
I love it. You're reminding me of what you said earlier about a former boss saying this isn't a rehab facility, and HR isn't about rehab. And yet, it's like, if we know our organization is doing people harm, right? It's not about being a rehab facility. It's about addressing the things that are harming people so that we're
Yes.
not doing harm, so that we are, as you said, promoting health, right? And work isn't equated to suffering, right? Work is something that's natural for all humans and something that people take a lot of meaning from. So I love that you see the relevance of this. And I wonder, do you use it with any of your executives that you work with? Or is it something, I mean, I don't know how many people look at the Surgeon General's website, right?
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
do, but I think I'm not normal.
Right. Well, and again, excited to have this conversation because I don't use it explicitly, and
Mhm.
yet it is behind the scenes in everything that I do. And so it's just made me curious about, well, what if I took it from behind the scenes and made it more front and center for folks? What would that look like? How would that help? Because like I said, I haven't, but I'm very familiar with it. I've read it. I went, yep, okay, yay. I'm on the right track in terms of how I'm thinking things, but how do I actually then, like I said, make this more accessible or explicit? Um, because one of the things that I'm very interested in and is really part of just my business overall is I'm not necessarily interested in just sharing opinions or my experience or anything like that. Research is super important to me.
Mhm.
And so using other people's research, of course, not my own because I haven't, but really saying, yeah, this is real and this has been researched and and so another piece like this, I think it just could be helpful in my own repertoire of things that I offer.
So let's say you had the outlier executive who maybe had seen it and brought it to you, right? And was saying, and I've had a number of people ask me, like, how do I implement this? Right. So it's
Mhm.
like, because it is sort of like, it gives the impression that I can take it and I can put it somewhere, kind
Mm.
of like a stamp, I guess. You know what I mean? Like I would want to try to implement it all at once. And of course, then you reassure people and you say, there's no possible way of implementing this all at once. Um, but what we need to do is start somewhere, right? And start some movement. So if someone brought it to you and was interested in trying to move in this direction, how would you see that conversation going? Like, where would be a starting place for somebody that was interested?
Yeah, that to me is really easy because I think it starts with safety.
Mm,
I mean, that for me is, and I work a lot in manufacturing organizations. And so I've worked in them myself. I support a lot of manufacturing organizations now as a coach, but I also have worked in them myself. My husband worked in manufacturing for many, many years. He has clients that work in manufacturing, and I know the reality of the physical risks to humans. And then there's also the emotional, right? And the mental and the psychological safety. So for me, that is the starting point. Like, are you really paying attention to first and foremost the physical aspects of the work that's happening? And
mm,
that doesn't just have to be in manufacturing, of course. And then are you really paying attention to the psychological safety, where people can I had a client yesterday. This is a super refreshing story. And I have lots of them, and then I have not so much. But I had one yesterday where I supported this individual with an emotional intelligence assessment. And because she was suffering, and her
mm,
leader said, "Gosh, I care about her. And I want her to be happy. I want her to thrive at work, and she's really struggling." And I was just thinking, maybe, if you spent some time with her and helped her see like emotional intelligence and the aspects of that. And her boss was like, "I don't really even know what that means. That's why I'm asking you to do it." But so we did, and we spent some time with it. And the thing that she focused on was resilience for herself. But in that idea of resilience, she also knew that she needed to take care of herself
mm,
and really pay attention. And so we had this closing meeting, if you will, with her boss yesterday. And her boss was like, "She's a different person, and she wants to work from home. I've made that happen so she can work from home. She's teaching me things. I care about her. This is all about," and she kept using the word, "this is about her well-being."
mm.
And so I was just so excited. But the thing that they talked about was having these very transparent and open conversations. And that's psychological safety, right? She could say, "This is how I'm feeling." And her boss could say, "Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. I didn't know that. And what can we do together so that you can really have an experience here that is good for you and healthy?" So that to me just speaks to that idea of safety first and foremost, because I think without that, the rest of it gets a little tough.
So, um, when you're talking about safety in the manufacturing culture, I assume most people relate it to the physical safety, right? Because you have to have a safety group who is working. Many times working on a safety culture, whatever that
Mhm.
translates to in their environment, right? And so do you ever
Yes.
collaborate with those folks, or is the coaching scene is somewhat separate from the safety initiatives that the organization is doing by law and you know because they want to have a safety culture. So
Mm.
how does your work fit with that?
Yeah. Um, so two things. One, I've definitely supported leaders that are in the safety realm.
Yeah.
And I had an individual about a year ago that I was working with, and what he realized, it was a beautiful story again, because what he realized is in his, "I need to be the safety guy," um, people were afraid of him. And so they weren't really telling him some
Mm,
of the things that they needed to tell him. So again, that gets to the psychological safety aspect of it. So
yeah.
he could enforce the rules and all of those kinds of things. And this man has this beautiful, huge heart, but he learned through other places and just his own experiences that no, that's not how you're supposed to be, right? And so when we peeled that back and he went out on the floor with this open heart and this willingness to listen and to be super approachable, it changed things, and they became even more safe because of it. So I definitely support people like that. But I also I mean, my belief is that safety is everyone's responsibility. So every single leader needs to be thinking about and talking about what is our culture like? Is it safe both physically and then psychologically? And so not just leaving that to those safety folks, but really everyone going, oh no, that is my responsibility. I
Mhm.
cannot delegate that. I need to own it, and it has to be a shared kind of thing. And not everybody thinks like that either, right? So that's part of the opening up to, oh gosh, wait, what is leadership really? What does that mean?
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you've given it a lot of thought, obviously, and created a career out of it. So how do you see leadership?
Oh gosh, I say to people all the time, so leadership is not for the faint of heart because it requires a lot of a human being.
Mm.
And I believe that everybody has the capacity to become an amazing leader, but they have to be willing to really do a deep dive into themselves first. So it all starts with self. It's not this idea that I walk into work and I'm a leader and I leave work and I'm not. No, leadership is deploying you, yourself, into the circumstances to create outcomes. The question is, which self are you deploying? Because we've all got different parts of us. We've all
Our
got
wounded
things that we
selves, where we
cover.
play
Yes,
out our
yes,
problems on other people.
absolutely. Right? Absolutely. So this very reactive tendencies, these habits, because we are trying to keep ourselves safe. That's just human nature, right? That's the ego saying, I need to look smart enough. I need to look like I'm a hard worker. I need to be nice. I need people to like me, blah, 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 whatever those stories are. But leadership is not that. That'll get you results, but they're very short term. And they
Mm.
don't actually open up for others to truly participate. So there's this transcendence beyond that smaller self and into, oh gosh, wait, why am I here really? What is my purpose? And how do I let go of this need to just protect and feel safe so that we can actually do some really cool things?
So that's the connection to safety, is that you think some of these behaviors where people are ineffective because they're kind of shut off or they're self-protective is because they don't feel safe. So then they create an environment where other people don't feel safe. Is that correct?
100%. Yes, 100%.
Interesting.
The word fear comes up every single time I'm working with a leader or a leadership group, emerging. I mean, they're afraid, right? And when they start to realize that, oh gosh, I'm acting out of fear, and we see that because that does create an environment where others then cannot bring their best and they aren't bringing their best. And so we move beyond fear, and that's hard, right? But we have to try to move beyond fear into love, quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
and purpose and all of these things about, gosh, this is bigger than me. So I have to give up some of that need for such a safety type of mindset for me in order to really create something different for others. It is not an easy game, obviously. And so, people will come and say, oh gosh, can you just make this person a different human in the next 6 months? And it's like, no, no.
Do you people please fix Joe, right?
Right, exactly. And it's like, no, that's not what we're up to here. That's not at all what we're up to. But Joe will hopefully by the end of 6 months have such a deeper awareness of himself, a greater appreciation, an ability to catch himself and make a different choice in the moment than the habits and the reactive things that he's always done.
I'm struck by, so when we first started to talk, and you were describing your background in human resources, and then we talked a little bit about safety and the safety group and their mission, right? Both similar in nature in that there are rules that everyone has to follow, and there's the enforcement of the rules. And sometimes the enforcement of the rules defeats the purpose to begin with, right? I mean, it's hard to be vulnerable to the police,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Um, So one of the things I've talked about in this series with another person is the need for integrating this across boundaries, right? And you talked a little bit about that when you were talking about safety belongs in every position. Are there other things from this model that you think could be integrated, or I go back to HR again, like what would a new version of HR look like if it was focused on mental health and
Yeah.
well-being at work? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking that as an engineer,
Mm,
but I sure would like to
yeah.
see it, whatever it would
Me
be.
too. Me too. So I think, again, as I look at that model, I believe that every part of that is leadership, again, and not just meant for people in these particular functions, but meant for everyone, not in even just a leadership position, but to take responsibility to help create that environment. Now, as I think particularly about HR, oh gosh, yes, would I love to see HR change and evolve. And yes, and what I learn the more I talk to HR people today, and I still see this fear-based type of culture that they can inadvertently, it's a fascinating thing with HR because similar to me, why did you go into HR? Because I love people.
Hmm.
And yet we're not, but it's because of their own insecurities, their own fear base, their own need to take care of themselves. And so until they can, move beyond that and really start to have different conversations with leaders. Because the other thing that HR often wants to do is just take over. Well, I'll just do that for you. I'll just have that tough conversation. I'll just, right? And it's like, no, you've got to be having the conversations with the leaders and helping them to see this is their responsibility. And how do I help you in that?
In sort of the fractioned or siloed workplace, that's the OD people or the training people that are supposed to help. I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yes,
there's a special function for each of these things, right? And I think it defeats the overall effectiveness because as you were saying, then people don't learn how to create safety and health themselves, right?
that's right.
So yeah, it's interesting. Do you have any resources, Karen, that you would recommend that people look at if they were trying to think about how to increase well-being in their workplace?
Well, for me, it kind of goes back to that story that I was sharing earlier about emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And I really do believe that it is a critical element and it is the differentiator for people because IQ and technical knowledge and all those things, yep, it's kind of table stakes, right? Yes, you need that. But the differentiator for people and the thing that will open them up and wake them up to actually even thinking about this framework for me comes down to emotional intelligence because it is the personal side, right? Like I need to work on me. I need to understand myself and my triggers and how I manage my emotions and how I deploy them into different behaviors. But I also need to be paying attention to this other human that's sitting with me and these other humans that I work with. And can I tune into them at the same time I'm tuning into me? How do I hold myself? Do I have high self-regard? Do I have low self-regard? How do I hold others? Do I hold them higher than me? Do I hold them lower than me? We want them both to be the same because from there, then everything starts to just feel a little different. So I don't have like one particular resource on that. There's so many out there, but I do offer, as I did with that gal that I talked about, the opportunity to engage in an assessment process with me, have a
Mhm.
couple of follow-up sessions to really see what we see. Because I just think it's so necessary for everybody. I did a workshop recently in a manufacturing organization and it was all of the supervisors of the different shifts on the floor and they walked in like we're going to talk about emotions. Oh my gosh, why this
What a waste
no,
of time.
right?
That
And
has
they
nothing to
left.
do with work.
Yep, they left 4 hours later like, oh my gosh. no, it's not what I thought it was. And I'm starting to connect the dots, and I'm starting to see that my emotional intelligence as a supervisor, as a leader, whatever, is absolutely critical to getting the things that we all want to get from work, right? So that would be just one thing that I would say. I still like, I think everybody knows about it or reason, but I every day run into people that are like, what is that? I've never heard of that. So
Well, so there are books about it, and then, so a person can read about it. I think in my experience, it's usually more engaging to work live with someone
yeah,
about it, because reading about something I can be entertaining and
yeah,
informative, but I don't know that it's usually transformative, right?
no, right, right.
Um, so I will definitely put the link to your site,
Appreciate that.
with this video. And if people want to get in touch with you, you're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I think you do work all around the
All
country,
around.
right? Yeah.
Yes, yep, absolutely.
Well,
That
fantastic.
that is the one thing COVID opened up, is the opportunity for people to go, oh wait, we actually can have a deep, meaningful connection, even though I'm not in the same room with you. And so, yes, I work globally, actually, which has been phenomenal. So, yeah, but I do reside in the Milwaukee area, but all of the information and how to get in touch with me is on my website. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me about this. And if ever you do find someone bringing it to you, please do
All
let
right.
me know, because I'm going to keep count, right? How many people are
Absolutely.
looking at the Surgeon General's website?
Yes, yes. I will definitely let you know. But thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. I could geek out on this obviously for days. So, I won't today, but thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Karen. And hopefully we'll get to work again together soon. So
Yes.
take care.
All right. You too.